We are live on Facebook. Hello, everybody on Facebook Live. We are about to go live here, and we are streaming. Okay, this is Ed Portillo. I am a program coordinator with NAMI Orange County. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited that you're all here and joining us for C.A.R.E Together, our third C.A.R.E Together series, our knowledge forum that NAMI Orange County launched this summer. And before we get started, I want to do something fun. I'm going to send out a poll to everybody, just kind of asking where everybody's from. So if you're from California, if you're from outside of California, maybe you're outside of the country, we want to know, because right now we are linking the whole country with our guests. So Shivani and I are in California. Mr. Jones is in Indiana, in the center of the country, and Emmanuel is all the way in Tampa, Florida. So we are bringing the country together here. So it looks like there's a good amount of people that are from California and a couple outside. So we are excited that you're all joining us, and this is live on Facebook as well at NAMI Orange County's webpage. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have a couple of housekeeping things before we get into our talk. First, I just want to thank the NAMI Orange County Executive Committee for encouraging our team to develop this series. This is an effort to speak to the issues that our society is dealing with right now, especially relating to diversity and inclusion. And we appreciate that these issues are issues that NAMI Orange County cares about. And we look forward to developing more content like this in the future. And also, you're going to notice if you go to NAMI Orange County events on Zoom, it looks a little different. This is a webinar, so we don't see your faces right now. We can't really necessarily directly interact with you like our meetings, but we want you to focus on the question and answer portion. There's a question and answer button that we want you to engage with throughout the talk. So we're going to cover a lot of issues in this talk, and there might be some questions. So feel free to write in the question in the Q&A section. And I want to introduce our lead program coordinator, Shivani. She is going to be taking the questions and hosting the question and answer section. Hi, Shivani.
Hi, everyone.
Hey there. And so we encourage engagement. This knowledge forum is not only to educate, but it's to have a dialogue. And so we're going to have something special as far as dialogue in this talk that we'll see later, that I'm really excited about, because I don't even know what it's going to be about necessarily, because it's a talk between a father and a son. So we're really excited to show that. So I know because of Emmanuel, our guest, there might be some people that maybe aren't as familiar with NAMI and what NAMI does. So let me give you a little background onto what we're all about. So NAMI is an organization that's about 40 years old. It's a grassroots organization that supports the mental health community through education, support, and advocacy. And throughout the United States, there are NAMI organizations in different counties, different cities. We happen to be in Orange County, California, and our administrative office is in Santa Ana. And the ways that we do education is myself, I'm part of the programs team under Shivani. We have 3 signature classes that we do throughout the year. Right now, we're doing it on Zoom through because of the pandemic, but we focus on families, we focus on peers, and we also focus on parents that have children that have a diagnosis. And what's unique about NAMI's programming is that each person that is sharing and teaching has lived experience. So there's a community that's being built, there is education that's being given, and so awareness is being brought to bring families, peers, and parents together around the issue of mental health and to eliminate the stigma. So through support, we have the OC Warm Line. So anybody really in the United States, but really we focus on Orange County for our resources. But if you need somebody to talk to, we have a 24-hour support line at 714-991-6412. That's 714-991-6412. And that's the OC Warm Line. It's a resource line that we have through NAMI Orange County. And of course, advocacy. So NAMI California does a lot of advocacy with the state of with our state to push mental health issues. And so we want to support the mental health in a holistic way. And so part of what we're doing here with our C.A.R.Es Together is not only having a dialogue, but really educating the audience on issues that deal with diversity and inclusion. And CARES Together stands for Cultivating Awareness, Respect, and Empowerment Together. And so we came up with this again in the summer, and it's been something that's a passion project for a lot of us. And we're so excited to have our third talk on generational mental health. So what we mean by generational mental health is really a conversation between two generations talking about their mental health experience. So in this case, we have two guests where the son has a journey with his mental health experience, and then the father and his perspective as he went through it as well. So we're going to have an interesting dialogue. And again, plenty of time for questions as well. So we want to first go into introductions before we jump into the conversation. And first I want to introduce Emmanuel Jones. Emmanuel's a YouTube influencer, podcast host, mental health motivational speaker, and founder of DT Nation, that stands for Depression Talks, and a friend of NAMI Orange County. So joining us from Tampa, Florida is Emmanuel Jones. How you doing, Emmanuel?
Hello. Hi. Thank you, Edward. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Well, sorry, it's good to see you as well. Hi, everybody. My name is Emmanuel. I am a mental health motivational speaker and CEO and founder of Depression Talks. And for the past 4 years, I have shared my story when it comes to my own experiences of dealing with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, and even my own suicide attempt in December of 2016. And since that journey, I have learned and created something called the 50.1 method that has helped me improve my mental health. And I now teach that on stages, online, on the podcast, as Edward has said, etc. So that is a bit about who I am.
And what's great about the community that Emmanuel started is that a lot of people are commenting all the time. You see his videos, there's a lot of engagement. He even has a private Facebook group for Depression Talks that's over 200 members strong. It's growing practically every day.
Yes, we are just to quickly share it. If you're someone that feels alone when it comes to dealing with sadness, hopelessness, depression, you are not alone. Okay, and this is to share the community of DT Nation. Facebook, almost 300 members, and then online total over 23,000 members. So I promise you, you're not alone when it comes to mental health.
Amazing. So great supporter, great champion for mental health. And we have Mr. Jones, Emmanuel's father, a professional photographer of Stillwater Images. He's a great family man and a wonderful person, and also a friend of NAMI Orange County. We have Jim Jones Jr.
Hi. First of all, thank you for having me, Edward. Of course, I'm Emmanuel's father. And of course, today we're going to be talking about mental health and awareness and our experience as father and son, and a very open and honest dialogue about our journey together. And hopefully we'll be able to help some other parents and kids maybe open up dialogue of their own, and start breaking down the stigmas attached to mental health, especially in the Black and Brown community.
Absolutely. And just to give you a little bit of the format, we're going to have a little bit of a dialogue between me and Emmanuel and Mr. Jones. And then there's going to be a dialogue between the father and son. And after that moment, we'll have question and answer. So we definitely want to engage with that as well. So let me just jump into the first question. So Emmanuel, as a founder of DT Nation, you have really put yourself out there. If you go to your YouTube page, one day you'll be doing capoeira, another day you'll be doing dance, another day you'll be talking about how hard that particular day was. You wear everything on your sleeve. It's exciting, it's challenging. There's a lot of, you journey with your audience. Could you just first talk us through how did you get to that place where you were ready to kind of open that side up to you, to everyone? Can you talk a little bit about your journey to getting to starting DT Nation?
Yes. Excuse me. That was a really great question. Honestly, it was definitely, as most people say, a lifelong journey, but it really was because, I wasn't aware about depression or didn't really know what it was in high school and college even. But after helping a lot of people throughout my life with their relationships or helping them with even their homework or different problems they're going through in their life personally, I wanted to start to do that online. So then that's when I began a manual with an I, which came before Depression Talks. But when I did manual with an I was doing general advice, and it was just helping everybody with everything. In 2016, I lost my grandmother, and I went through job loss. I went through so many different struggles and issues, and that I didn't feel comfortable talking about. That, as I said, led to my attempt. After my attempt, I then realized if I'm able to help people in my personal life, when it comes to all their issues, I know there are a lot of other people that are dealing with depression and anxiety that have had suicidal thoughts, that have attempted suicide, and feel like they can't talk to anyone else. So that's what made me make the decision to come out with Depression Talks, so that way I can build this community, DT Nation, that openly talks about depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem.
That's great. Yeah, and you really have a heart. You really care. It's very evident that it's not just, you know, you're showing your talents, or you really have the heart behind it. And so I want to ask you, Dad, to have your son make that decision that he wants to put himself out there in that way and cover a subject that has so much stigma attached to it, has so much, you know, in families, it's a taboo subject to talk about mental health. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that acceptance, understanding, and how that affected your family dynamic?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm very proud of him. He's very open and honest about everything that he's gone through and that he's going through, you know, from day to day. First of all, mental health is not something we really talk about in the Black community, number one. We are taught to seek counseling like a pastor versus an actual mental health expert. Pray it out, those kinds of things. And those are all very harmful things to tell someone when they're suffering from clinical depression and anxiety. So that was the first thing. So number two, until you actually until you actually have experienced someone that was dealing with it or experienced it for yourself, you don't even know what it means. I mean, you don't even know where to begin. You know, there is no a book. You know, it's like they say nobody teaches you how to be a parent, but nobody teaches you how to deal with mental health either. You know, it's something that we have had to go through this journey with Mel, you know, together and learn together. And he's taught us, you know, really about what's going on in his life. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of him. But it's you know, I learned, it really opened up my eyes to mental health overall, and really how it impacts the person who is dealing with it, and the people maybe who, including the professionals who are helping that person deal with it. Yeah, so I'm learning something new, I think, probably at least, you know, every year, you know, regarding mental health, because even now as I go out and I see things and I hear things from other people, and I'm like, okay, now I see it, now I understand. It's not in their head, you know what I mean? It's not something that they can just pray and it's gone. Just just snap out of it, right? That's not what it is. You know, it's something that is very challenging, something very crippling even. You know, depression makes you feel like you're all alone. You know, I've learned that, and that it will literally tell you that no one cares about you, and you can't talk to anyone else, and you shouldn't. And so the person dealing with that and dealing with that anxiety tends to draw inward into themselves. And sometimes it can result in, unfortunately, someone taking their life.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and it's a very layered subject, and it's something that if you're going through it with no experience, it is a learning process. And, you know, I want to kind of get into something and going off of putting yourself out there, Emmanuel. If you want to share the screen, there's a clip that really struck me that I want to talk about, because people that are listening, people that have gone through NAMI classes, have gone with a family member that has been hospitalized. And so, you know, this is one of the most compelling videos that I found, where you were honest with your audience to talk about your hospitalization. I just have like a little 10-second clip that I wanted to play, and really to showcase to everyone, the audience, that this is his YouTube page. He has videos about this subject as well as many other subjects. But really, if we could just play this really quick and talk about it.
Of course. Here we go. So Thursday night, my friend was hanging out with me, and she was very worried, and she called my mom. And this spiraled into me having to be admitted in the hospital because my parents were very worried.
Yeah. So I want to get into that. And if you can just take us back to that moment, because for the sake of a video, you have to speed it up and what you're saying. But
Yes.
if you can walk us through, how did you get to that place where you accepted to be hospitalized?
Got you. Well, as Edward said, I post content on my YouTube channel that is very honest and open. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable talking about it, but I know it's important to talk about because other people are going through these things. So it needs to be talked about, at least from my perspective. So on that particular moment, a year beforehand, I had attempted. A year later, since I didn't, honestly, looking back on it now, didn't take the time to say, I attempted, I should probably seek help since I clearly have not been able to necessarily do it on my own. I didn't listen to my own advice, and I was feeling very, low about myself. I hated who I was. I was hating my life, feeling numb, feeling like nothing I was going to do would change my life, honestly, no action, etc. And at night, I was having suicidal thoughts. And then my friend noticed, and that's when my friend called my parents, and right in the middle of the night. So it wasn't a moment of, I'm going to happily go to the hospital and here we go. It was, my parents were called for my friend, and they expressed their concern about what I was going through. And they said, Emmanuel, hey, we can't force you to go to the hospital. We can't force you to admit yourself into the hospital. You got to walk in yourself. If you want the help, you got to do it yourself. So, and then, like, of course, they said, we're right there alongside you to support you, So what happened the next day is they were already at the hospital. I drove to the hospital, and they were right there next to me, and I walked right inside. And that's what led me to going into my first experience in the psychiatric center.
Yeah, and if the audience watches the video, you also explained why it was one of the most beneficial moments in your life, changing as well. Yeah. And I think, going to you, Mr. Jones, the thing that stood out to me in the video is when he said spiral, because that implies that it was a process, and that implies that it was something that you may not have been completely aware of, and you were brought in that moment, in that call in the middle of the night. And so I want to just talk about that moment and how the reaction was with you and your wife, and just how you were able to support, process all of those things in that moment.
Well, okay. So we had at this point probably been dealing with Emmanuel his depression. At this point, we already knew Emmanuel, there's something was wrong. We knew it was depression. We didn't know, or believed, I should say, it was depression, but we didn't know to what level. And he had not been diagnosed yet. And he has, and now the thing about us and Emmanuel, his parents, is that we've always kept the lens of communication open. And that's very important. Yes. I remember that before all this, we spent many times talking, me and Emmanuel, in the garage after coming home from a soccer game, and just talking about life and things, That moment, everything that led up to that moment, was I guess a learning experience. And when he called his mom, actually, and he called his mom because I was working, I believe. And he called his mom. She called me, of course, and explained to me what was going on. We were happy that he wanted to go to the hospital and wanted to get the help he needed, because we couldn't force him to. I mean, he's an adult. He was an adult at that time. There's really nothing we could force him to do. He had to voluntarily admit himself to the hospital. So we met him there, and that was actually the beginning of really getting some answers for all of us. It was really, I think, the very beginning of I would say the first turning point, because there have been many turning points throughout this journey. That was just one of many.
Yes.
But that was the beginning. So yeah, it was it was tough to know that he was going through these things, and we felt helpless, quite frankly, because we were. Nothing we could do besides, again, talk to him, answer the phone, we picked up, call and talk. Well, how are you feeling? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, there's no, like you're saying, there's no handbook to be a parent. There's no handbook to be in these situations. And, the history, the foundation that you guys built with your relationship really kind of dictated, it sounds like, the actions that you're taking. And part of what we wanted to do here is to open up the dialogue between you, Emmanuel, and your father, to have this conversation of the journey, of the way that you your perspective, his perspective. I have questions that I can keep on asking, but I really think the dialogue between you two would really shed a lot of light and help people to kind of understand your perspective and maybe get some healing or get some perspective that would help them. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it to you guys if you want to take some time to have a dialogue, and I'll
Awesome. Well, I mean, Edward, first of all, thank you for allowing us to have a dialogue with one another. And Daddy, are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's do this thing. So I do want to just start off by asking, when I was in high school, did I always seem like a positive child most of the time, or just from on the outside, I just generally seem like just a positive kid, from a parent's perspective, from your perspective?
Well, they say hindsight is 20/20. There's a little bit of hindsight here when I say this, but as your mother always says, you came out a smiling, bouncing baby boy. Yeah. So, and you were always to us very, very much of an extrovert. So there were times, I would say, when you had these mood swings, and we didn't really know what was going on. We thought, you were a kid, and then of course when puberty hit, all kids go through mood swings. So it's not to us, it was nothing unusual, a girl didn't like you, and that, took you down. Some of your friends maybe were popular, and that destroyed you. Somebody was better at soccer or a sport, and that we thought was, well, we didn't, obviously nobody was thinking depression or anxiety or anything like that. So we had a lot of talks about the game, especially soccer, because that was our thing. We talked about the game of soccer and tried visualizing this, and none of us knew what was going on. You know what I mean? And it was like, so high school was, for me, and we've all gone through high school.
If I may say to that point, like, because we did talk about this briefly, I believe last time. The perception of you went through high school and I went through high school, and we both went through high school, but we both had different experiences, even though lots of similarities, if not a lot. Like,
Right.
and I guess from my perspective, as a child's perspective, hindsight's 2020. But I guess in that time, I maybe thought in my mind like, no one else, right? No one else can understand my experience. And my parents, now I think this is a childish type of mentality that I did have. There's no way they can understand, or more so plus, I don't want to make them honestly sad. That like I didn't want to come home and tell mommy and daddy I don't want to be here anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
how would I feel? You know, so it is interesting that we both had similar experience in the high school, but do you feel like you're, I guess, stronger, or do you think maybe mentally in high school, like you kind of had this mentality, like I'm about to just kind of get through anything that I'm going through? Because for me, it was more difficult to have that mentality or hold on to that mentality. If that makes sense.
Well, I think it's just a totally different thing. Because see, honestly, to me, it's really not that deep. And again, looking back, we can't compare the two, because I was not dealing with clinical depression and anxiety. I was dealing with growing up where I grew up in high school, doing the problems I had to deal with.
Okay.
But I didn't have to, and again, depression, everybody gets depressed, right? At some level, and so, yeah, we all go through things. And even as a child, even as someone who didn't go through clinical depression, I've entertained suicide as a kid, because it was one of those things where, well, girls don't like me and I'm just gonna, it's like, it's funny how your brain kind of works that way.
Yeah.
But I was able to come out of that and go, you know what, it's not that it's not that deep, but it's like, you just get over it. You know what I'm saying? You just move on, because something is that next thing around the corner. Maybe a good day the next day. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I do agree with that, but I will say this, and this is where it is interesting, because being on the side of mental health advocate, right? I know, or I more so feel like a lot of the things that you're saying, Daddy, a lot of people don't agree with. Now I know that only because depression and anxiety made me think for sure that, like, how can anyone else say I just get over it, or it's not that big of a deal, or it's really not that deep. You are right. It is not that deep, and our mind makes us believe it really is the worst thing on earth, though. Because in high school, that heartbreak, everybody does go through heartbreak.
Absolutely.
But I believe that when I went through the heartbreak, I guess my mind was saying, like, she was whoever I'm dating at the time, but that person, or this particular thing that I am associating all my happiness into, or this thing that brings me a lot of happiness, it's now gone, and I feel like I no longer have any type of happiness within myself.
Right.
And then, yeah. So how does that? I don't know. How do you take that? I guess. Do you feel like when you're dealing with depression, when you say you bounce out of it, what is that process for you? Like, because you said it's not that deep, but like, what is that process? How come it's, for you, it's, I guess, easier to bounce out of that depression than for me it was the majority of my life in high school, college, middle school, etc.
I'm gonna tell you straight up, I don't know, because if I told you that I had the answer to that, if I could put it in a jar and sell it, I would. I have no clue. I have no clue, because listen, every time you talk to somebody, you find out everybody has had challenges, right? Not everybody suffers from, first of all, let's always understand that everybody suffers from clinical depression. Totally different ballgame.
You said everybody does suffer from clinical depression, or
does not?
That is true. I believe that everybody feels depressed.
Right.
Everybody
goes depressive periods, right? It can be 5 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, it could be a couple hours, it could be a day. It could be a few days, but not everybody has to deal with constant thoughts in your head telling you that you're no good, telling you that nobody likes you, telling you that nobody wants to listen to you, telling you that nobody cares.
Yeah.
I never have to deal with that in my head. I have to deal with me being in my own head, you know what I'm saying, kind of thing, rather than for like an external voice is speaking to me so much. So I don't know, it's just different. So for me, like now as an adult, I can say confidently that music recenters me. Movies recenter me. Fishing recenters me.
Yeah.
Something good to eat. Every little good thing that I do is like, I look at it as a scale. You've got the scale of, for me, of sadness. Let's call it sadness instead of depression this time, and the scale of happiness. And I will try to put as much on that scale of happiness as I possibly can to get out of whatever funk I'm in. I've been depressed for days over stuff. It might just be what's going on in the world today. It might be, oh, this feels like it's just I'm very much of an empath, so I kind of feel what the world's going through. And there are days when I'm like, I'm not depressed, I'm just sad, like, and moody or something. I'm like, I don't feel like getting up.
So when you, it's cool how you pointed out, or kind of like the nugget I took from everything you said, because to me, you said a lot of good points. But one thing that you pointed out from me is you more so had to worry about or focus on your own mind.
Yeah.
And you didn't necessarily have to mainly focus on the other noise that comes from the minds of others. With me,
perception of maybe.
Perception of others. Yes, perception of others. That's true. Because for me, actually really wasn't until this year that my mind was only either in my own head or everyone else's. Everyone else is around me. Back then, I thought it was normal though. Like, because but when we, as you said, since we both were kind of not knowing what depression was at the time, we said it was like blind leading the blind. Since the world mainly doesn't talk about it, it's not a common topic to talk about, then why would it be a common topic to talk about in the household when it's not even in front of our face? It's just,
yeah.
So I guess all the point I'm trying to make is, I think a lot of people, at least for me, wish it was very easy to just be in only our own heads instead of having to worry about the perceptions of other people, because it's like this constant thing that's in the back of our minds.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're a type of person that is confident in just kind of walking in who you are, for example?
Nobody starts off, well, I can't say nobody. I don't think many of us start off that way in life. Like I said, you were always an extrovert. I was an introvert growing up. This conversation we're having right now, I don't think I would have been able to do it when I was your age. So I think some of us mature into this, like where I'm at now, very much so. Growing up as a teenager and as a young adult, and again, I think it's more based on life's experiences, what you go through. Everything that I've gone through since joining the military up to this point now has helped me come out of that shell.
Okay.
So I don't think that confidence is like something that you just, most of it's just a self-esteem and, being, socially active or any of those things that just comes naturally to all of us. It certainly didn't for me starting off, and I find it strange, really funny, think about it, because like I said, you were always an extrovert. So from our perception, because you were, and it's just interesting, because even with that, you still had to go through, everything pretty much that I went more obviously than I went through to get to the point where you were at now.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I guess the perception of extroverts is that we're confident people.
Facts.
outside perception,
Right.
which makes sense because I'm talking to everybody, but on the inside, I actually felt like I was the shyest person in the room because I was the most afraid to express my emotions. Does that make
Your
sense?
real emotions.
My really
Because that's important. You always expressed yourself, but not your real emotions, not the side that you said earlier was, I don't feel like being here. You don't have a smile on your face for everybody else. We talked about this a long time ago. You always want to make everybody else around you feel happy, but you never want anybody to feel your pain. So you always had a smile on your face. You didn't want to bring anybody else down. And, and that's usually what happens. Sometimes what happens is people are suffering from depression. You don't even know it until it's too late because they, you hear they seem like such a happy person. They always had a smile on their face, and it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's to cover up the pain and it's to cover up the voices, it's to cover up the hurt that they're going through. And, but at the end of the day, after saying all that, obviously what it comes down to is at some point you have to hope that person really stops smiling and says, I'm having these feelings every day. I have these voices talk to me, telling me I'm no good. I'm not worthy of being here. And I think that's fine when you start to have that honest dialogue with us, like something's wrong. And we were like, boy, he just seemed like he was so happy all the time. He seemed like he has friends. He's doing good in school. He's a great soccer player. He's a great athlete.
Yes.
And we're like, is this just in his head?
Right.
And we
I
talk.
will share this. I'm trying my best not to cry right now because it's true. Those are all true. Excuse me, because it is. You are very right. I'm really happy right now. These are happy tears because, wow. See, I told you I'm emotional. I cry on my YouTube channel, everybody, because everybody cries. So tears of joy, sad joy, whatever. But it's just mind-boggling, honestly, just to hear how my parents literally, like, I know you get it. Just hearing you say that. And there was a time in my life where I thought no one got it. Like 0 people. I mean,
we didn't
0
get it.
people.
Yeah, we didn't get it. Quite frankly, we didn't. We had no clue, did not understand. And even when you start talking, we thought maybe we thought it was just in your head. We literally thought it was just, as a matter of fact, I thought you were a little dramatic. I was like, he's just being a little dramatic, it's just, he's soft,
Right.
Because as men, I wouldn't consider myself a toxic male. We cry all the time. You know what I mean?
Toxic male?
No, a toxic, like a toxic masculinity.
Like an alpha male.
Yeah, we don't have that. We don't do that in our household, in our family.
We don't. Yeah, we don't do that.
And so, but still, you still are expected to be a certain way most of the time, right? Especially out in public or kind of thing. So and it's still as a man, you think that you can't share those things with other men, because you're soft, dude, you need to toughen up,
Yeah.
You came to me all the time, man. I don't shed a tear. Shed the tears. Yeah. You see guys crying. We're kind of in a little tangent here. You see guys crying over sports, but they can't cry for somebody that they care about, for their child. The child has a problem, and it's like, toughen up, man. You're soft. And we never did that. And I thought me telling you to toughen up, and I never actually said the words toughen up, but I was like, no, I was like, you gotta have a different mindset. Like when you go on that, you're talking about soccer a lot. When you go on that field, you gotta have, you gotta have a different, you gotta create a different persona for yourself.
Yeah. Because a different persona created that different mentality. And I was you correct me if I'm wrong. The soccer conversations we had, see, that is an interesting thought. It's how other things that I did in my life of regular experiences still affected my ability to beat depression the way I do today.
Yeah. So
let's say a soccer game, okay? Because we all go through things. We might go through work, we might go through a relationship, or whatever situation, and we're asked to do something, a task, whatever. And let's say we don't do well at it, we can either have negative self-talk and beat ourselves up, which is, as you saw, Daddy, I did all the time. I mean, right. Even if I played good games, I would just only see my flaws.
Right.
So today, since you talked me through that negative self-talk, when I can handle tasks, now when I have tasks in front of me, now when I have obstacles in front of me, goals in front of me, I can just say, okay, well, if I made this mistake this time, that does not mean that I'm done.
Right.
That came from soccer though. And I'm
right.
using that same mentality to beat depression. But that comes from parenting, as you said, because again, you coming up to me after soccer games and giving me that advice. So do you think that parents, from a parent's perspective, talk to their children emotionally about their life experiences? Or do you think that that is what you did already as a parent?
Based on the fact that we didn't know what was going on, we use sports analogies a lot, especially men. It's easy for us to relate to sport in that sense. Like I remember talking about basketball, like a three-point shooter is a three-point shooter because even when he misses, he keeps taking the shot because he knows that the next shot is the one that's going to go in. He believes it actually. The next shot is going to go in. Mm-hmm. And you have to very quickly forget about that very negative thing that you thought you had a second ago, because it's again, we're not talking about clinical depression now, right? But you can't think about that last shot that didn't go in, because then you'll stop shooting, which means in life's case, you'll stop trying and you'll stop living and you'll stop doing. So if you make a mistake, the best thing that you can do is understand it was a mistake, not the mistake of your life. And that the next second, not next minute, not next hour, the next second is a whole new second, and you can move on from there, and if you're making a mistake, you say it doesn't even, everybody makes mistakes. It's what you learn from it, what you do moving forward that matters. You've taught yourself that you said the 50.1 method, which, I hope a lot of people will learn from you, which is a totally different, it can even help someone like me to understand why I put myself in a negative place and how to get out of it more quickly.
Yes.
Kind of thing. But we talked about this before, you and I tend to do it, most of the time I do it naturally.
That's true.
Based on what I talked about earlier, which is all those little tiny things that add up, to the big picture of happiness for me,
I want to kind of piggyback off that, only for, I know me and you are having this dialogue, but this is kind of directly to the audience, because I don't want, it could be kind of confusing to hear that number 50.1 method and then the explanation. What my dad's talking about is I created something called the 50.1 method, and it allows you to be able to separate your emotions from thoughts. So that way you can analyze your emotions from an outside perspective instead of our own heads being ran by our emotions. If you can see your emotions on paper, it's better than having it here. That's the best way to break it down in an easier way. So when you're going through a negative situation, it's easier to bounce out of it since you can visually see it. But so I do want to kind of ask you this last question here.
Okay.
And it's because I feel like on the outside, from a child's perspective, this is a dream. It doesn't seem real. A child talking to, their father, honestly, about mental health, especially as a man, when men aren't supposed to talk about their emotions. I believe even though back in high school and stuff like that, I know you and mommy always wanted all your children to be happy, and as a parent, what does that mean to you, your children being happy? I know it's a very general, but
Sure it is.
my children are happy. Like, what does that look like, I guess, from, your parental perspective? And then I'll share mine from my child's perspective in terms of, expressing my depression to you, etc.
I think initially to be happy and successful, to have good friends, good relationships. That's it. And it doesn't mean you have to be rich. Doesn't mean it just means that you have to be able to take care of yourself and those you love. And that when you think about how things are going in your life, that you're going forward, you're moving forward in a positive manner. That to me is what happiness is most of the time. So when it came to all three of you, as we did our best to learn from our parents' mistakes and what they did not teach us, and then we learn from that. We talked to each other, your mother and I, about what we could do to prevent some of the pitfalls and traps of life, and then we taught you, all three of you, everything that we possibly could, so that when you graduated from high school, you're prepared, you had all the tools that you needed to not only survive, but to be happy and to thrive. That is the greatest thing a parent can do for their children, is to get them to the point where they can thrive on their own. And when anything hits them, life hits them, and life will, that they can go, yeah, this is hard, but you know what? I'm gonna fall back on this lesson that my mom told me. My dad told me to do this, or sometimes it's a phone call, and it's just a reminder of how strong you actually already are, and yeah, you just want to see kids happy and successful, whatever that means to them at the end of the day, as long as it's positive, obviously.
I believe there should be, I think every parent should have that mentality, hopefully. Hopefully they heard exactly what you said and said, yes, I want, because I believe that vision for any child is beautiful. And and I guess, for me, just to respond, and then Edward, I'll be contacting you, or calling you back after this, or talking to you after this. But I believe as a child, being happy is being able to feel comfortable talking about, honestly, my life experiences without the fear of judgment. Because no child wants to look bad in front of their parents. I think that's it. Because I think back in the day, because hearing you say this to me now, I was a smiling, happy person on the outside. And that means I was smiling and even happier at home. What stopped me? I do not want to disappoint my parents. I want them to be happy and smile too. So I believe a child, being a child myself, being happy is having an open communication with our parents, so that way we can all be happy together, openly talking about what we're all going through in this thing called life together.
At least that's your experience, and I hear you saying this. I'm thinking about all the kids though who are. I would say everybody's different,
right?
everybody's different. You know, every child is different. You know, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think that, yeah, and every parent's different. Excuse me. And every child has a great parent, you know, and everybody has a great situation, you know, kind of thing, you know, and that's a whole nother subject probably, but yeah.
In that case, then I guess I'll just say then my hope is that every single parent and child can have that conversation of just, I guess, talking about how they feel like we do today, because this is not normal. This is rare, and we both appreciate it. We both are thankful for it, because, you know, we wouldn't be here today talking about this like we do if it wasn't for what we've been through in the past.
Right.
But
right. And I think at the end of the day, I'm sorry, one thing, because what you just said, and this is for everybody who might be watching or listening, but I think, and I'm just going to throw this out here, I'm hoping that those who may not have some of the parent they feel that they can trust or they can talk to, that maybe they can find a relative or maybe a pastor or somebody that they can open up to, or a teacher, a counselor that they can talk to, because the point really is talk to somebody that you trust, even if it's a friend who might be able to help you the journey, but talk to somebody.
Please.
That's really the point. Talk to somebody that you trust, because trying to handle yourself or keep it in is not going to work. And Mel will tell you it is not work.
Talk about it. Talk to somebody about it.
Try to do this alone. Yeah.
Talk to somebody about it. Thank you, Daddy, so much again for honestly just this is epic to me. So father and son, I think that's just awesome. And Edward, I really do appreciate you allowing us to talk.
Me too, Edward. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. We thank you for sharing that and being intimate and vulnerable. And usually in our CARES talk, we have a little thing at the end that ties into the overall message. Like, what do you want to leave the audience with? And so, you know, Emmanuel, I'll just kind of hit it to you, because Mr. Jones really kind of just said it right now about talk to somebody, and that was really great. The little icing on it, his message you want to leave us with. If you can, you know, tell us your message of hope, what would you like to leave us with? And then if you can tell the audience where they can connect to you on for Depression Talks as well.
Okay.
And by the way, too, real quick, questions. So go ahead, and we're gonna go to questions after this. So feel free to go hit the Q&A and ask us the question. So go ahead, man.
I'll honestly say just one thing to the audience. Self-expression equals happiness. Okay. In life, I understand that expressing how we feel of sadness and all these things is super hard, and it almost feels impossible. But the more comfortable you become with trusting, just expressing yourself the way you choose to, because it's your life, the happier you become every single day. So you have every right to be yourself and express yourself exactly how you want to, because this is your life. So go out there, express yourself, and you are not alone when it comes to mental health.
And if people want to get a hold of you, they can find
Oh yes,
you
that's right. Sorry. Go to depressiontalks.org. If that has my Instagram, which is Depression Talks 1, my YouTube channel, which is Depression Talks or Emmanuel, and then also the podcast is Depression Talks Podcast. All that's located under depressiontalks.org.
Thank you. That's really great. So, you know, we really, again, appreciate both of you coming and giving your time and energy and having this important conversation. And we just want to open it up now to questions from the audience. So I'm going to ask my colleague Shivani to come back in, and I think there's a couple questions that are asked. And if anybody has a question also in Facebook, we are looking at Facebook too. So feel free to jump in. All right, here you go, Shivani.
All right. I just wanted to start off by thanking both of our panelists being here this evening. I think it was a great conversation, and I also thought it was awesome how vulnerable both of you were, and how honest you were as well. I think that's really important, especially for those of us who are trying to learn about mental health, learn about how to even open up and talk to family members about it. So I really think that hearing both perspectives from a parent and a child's perspective is really, really important. So I really wanted to thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
We do have some questions that came in. So one of the questions that came in, and this is just for both Emmanuel and Mr. Jones, so you can feel free to just bounce off each other. What type of rejection, if any, have you run into by professionals because they don't understand generational mental illness themselves?
Okay. If I can, I'll start off with this one because I've had the experience of being in 2 psychiatric centers, group therapy, Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I've had my share with different, even though Alcoholics Anonymous I wouldn't say professionals, but specifically in the professional industry, rejection is different for everybody, because a rejection to me could mean I'm getting a medication I didn't want, or they don't believe that I have this type of illness compared to this one, or no, I thought I did, or something, you know. So I would say I try my best not to even think about rejection. I just try my best to think about it as, what can I do to find out what's going on, more about what's going on in my head, so that way I can just feel happier in my life. So I guess focus on the positive and not the rejections from the professionals, if that helps you continue your process and your journey.
That's an interesting question. I never really had to deal with professionals. You know, I would say this, however, I think the person suffering from the mental health issue ultimately has to be the one who opens up to the professional. For example, if a parent takes their child to get diagnosed for what they believe to be a mental health issue, and the child is not open to being diagnosed, I have had the experience where, I'm not talking about a man, but where the child may be suffering from something, but be able to fool the professional. And know it's not quite the same thing, but it really takes the person wanting to seek help. Ultimately, I have not had or seen a male been rejected by any professionals myself. Go ahead, Mel. You want to say something?
Yes, I know there's probably a few questions, but kind of just to piggyback, Daddy, just to kind of piggyback off of that. If you are someone though that has had an experience of going to a professional, it did not work out. I've had a similar, I've been around a therapist. I've cried in my first session. The therapist made me cry. Still continue to seek professional help, because one professional therapist does not mean all professional therapists. So
there it is.
Professional help.
You have to find the right one that works for you. They're not all gonna be in tune with your, my wife says your vibe attracts your tribe, so to speak. And you can apply it to almost anything. You're gonna want to vibe with that professional. So you may be rejected by a professional or feel like they're not getting you. Continue to seek help from other professionals. You will land on one who will be able to help you, because they may have helped someone else like you previously, and it'll be a fit. So don't take rejection and then go, I got rejected, I'm done. Understand it's not always going to work out the first 1 or 2 times. Keep seeking that help. So I think that answers that question probably better. Thanks, Emil, for that, because that kind of sparked a memory. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. We have a couple more questions, and just in the event of time, I'll just ask both, and then you can just answer them, as a whole, so we don't waste time moving forward. So one of the questions is, how did all of this affect you financially? Maybe just in general, if you had to pay out of pocket or not out of pocket for seeking help. And then the other question that you can also answer in your dialogue is, how can a child, and maybe this is for Mr. Jones, but how can a child reach out to a parent in talking about their mental health, especially when a parent speaks of experience and avoids conversation because of stigma?
Right. That's a tough one. That's a really, really tough one. But that's a very loaded question, actually, because based on our experience with with Emmanuel, it was a very slow process. Number one, you know, how can a child approach a parent? You know, and experience. We talked about this. Me and Mel talked about this a little bit earlier about experiences. He felt like I was trying to relate my experiences to how he was feeling, and it upset him. You know, because that's all we have to rely on is our experience. So I would say don't demonize the parent for trying to relate to you. Just try to help them to understand that, continue to have the conversation, try to keep the dialogue open. I would say do not be accusatory, do not be do not attack that person verbally and emotionally. Try to help them to understand that you understand their experience. I would say, I understand where you're coming from. I've dealt with that too, but this feels different. You know, I'm having these voices, these negative thoughts all the time. You know, it's not like, you know, I'm just sad or, you know, or I had something happen and, you know, you know, even when I'm happy, I think this is really what turned us for the turning point for Mel. Mel say, even when I'm happy or when I should be happy, I'm not happy. When everything is going right, I'm not happy. And that might clue a parent in to go, wait a second. This is not the same thing. They're having their experience, my experience, and their experience are not the same. They're having a different challenge that I need to really start paying closer attention to, you know, and I think that's kind of how we work through a lot of that, you know, because I try to share my experiences with him. We had many conversations in the car, and I'm back when we would sit in the garage for an hour or two talking. And I'd share my experiences, how I went through, and blah blah blah. And it was like, and he listened, you know, and he absorbed it. But I'm not sure if I really touched upon the real problem. And now looking back, you know.
Well, I will say I definitely agree with that, and I think that change of thought process will help parents for sure. Talk to the child when it comes to the mental health, and then when it comes to like understand for time purposes as well. When it comes to the finances, the question about the finances, I actually personally pay for everything, but I also went to college and I have student debt and things like that. So I did, you know, get a lot of support from my parents. So that is how I was able to handle it. And please know, money is not more important than life. You know, your life is more important than money. So don't let that be a barrier. Get the help just in case.
And thank you for saying. And as a parent, as someone, we didn't have to deal with that with a male really as a child. He was an adult by the time he got the professional help he needed. You know, so he was actually off our insurance by that point. And that's actually why insurance is so important, though, right? Because that's actually what kind of gives you the freedom to get the help that you need.
That's true.
You know, you're not worried about some humongous bill coming in, you know, and again, also raising the stigma of mental health and have it treated as a real, you know, medical emergency, medical problem, you know, and getting these institutions like the medical institutions and the councils and the doctors to see it that way and to make sure that insurance does pay for these things, that really erases a lot of worry financially for a parent, you know.
Please get insurance if you can. Please.
Yeah, that's huge.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We went a little bit over, but we had some important things to cover. And so I just want to, again, take a moment to say thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Emmanuel. And again, Depression Talks, DT Nation. Please get in touch with that. And as well as NAMIOC.org. You can find out information about us as well. Shivani, thank you so much for fielding the questions. And everyone that attended, we appreciate it. We'll be back next month. We call it Table Conversation. talking about the racial divide as we go into our family conversations around Thanksgiving, Christmas. How do we handle a subject like that, in a healthy way, in creating boundaries? So we really want to look forward and invite you to that as well. So again, thank you guys all for coming, and we will see you next month.
Thank you, Edward. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
There is hope, y'all.
Yes.